listen to this very interesting case. Apparently, from 2008 to 2017, this lady worked as a plainclothes officer in the department's Specialized Intelligence Division. However, in 2017, the new Intelligence Division commander asked her to transfer out of the unit so he could replace her with a male police officer. This was against her wishes. Now she says that despite the fact that her wage was docked and she was getting paid the same, she no longer worked with high-ranking officials on the departmental priorities lodged in the Intelligence Division. Instead, she was supervising the day-to-day activities of neighborhood patrol officers. She also lost access to an automatic take-home vehicle and had a less regular schedule involving weekend shifts. In other words, she was unable to show any material significant disadvantage, but the very fact that she was inconvenienced and she was transferred from this division to another in order to be replaced with a male makes the court decide that she was being discriminated against. Now, the reason this is interesting is that, first of all, I don't think this has anything to do with diversity on the surface. Like, if we're talking about plainclothes officers, this probably has to do with undercover police work. So, you want to infiltrate a gang or something. Well, the gender does matter in most cases, especially because gangs in America, they aren't very diverse. They're quite patriarchal. So I assume this is what happened here. They were like, well, we need a guy to work undercover, and they replaced the female police officer with a guy. Now, she sues, she claims discrimination. But the thing is that this lawsuit is now going to be applied to diversity initiatives, because it's literally the same thing. The judge, Kavanaugh, wrote in a concurring opinion and even stated the some harm requirement, though a much lower barrier to litigation was, in his opinion, not required. His view is that no harm need to be proven, simply the act of discrimination on the basis of race, color, etc. is the only requirement. So basically, when you have a company that will say, well, we're preferring to hire people of color, people that are part of the LGBT umbrella, people of blah, 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 blah. And they're listing like literally everything under the sun. So you're going like, okay, well, if this is the requirement, which are the people that they don't want to hire? And when you look at it, it's just one category. It's usually straight white men, and sometimes they add Asians to that. Well, according to the Supreme Court, that is discriminatory. And now, if you have any evidence that it's being done, even if you are not actually being negatively influenced, is the simple act of discrimination that was there, then it allows for people to sue. So, despite the fact that some companies argued that there is such a thing as good discrimination and bad discrimination, that some people should be purposefully disadvantaged to pave the way for diversity, lawyers from companies like Disney are saying that this decision will complicate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and limit their ability to discriminate against white men. The Supreme Court torpedoed these claims, reassessing that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law, and further, the court has established that a relatively low standard for bringing discrimination cases, and that the victim need not to suffer actual harm. Now it's interesting because there is this thing that Disney's Pale and Male is Stale program. I don't know if this is just how the internet dubbed it, or someone during a TED Talk or in a conversation had it, but it wouldn't surprise me because I heard expressions like this. And it's programs like this that are going to suffer. The interesting thing is, I saw it on a live stream. I think it was on the Flashcast, and they brought up something that was very interesting, which was, would Walt Disney be able to get employed at Walt Disney? And the answer is no. Like, the modern Disney company would not hire its founder, Walt Disney, because of such initiatives like Pale and Male is Stale. Now, what's interesting is that I actually did hear from what's happening within companies and middle management and stuff, and most of the diversity is not necessarily ideological. It's also because the companies are greedy. Like, they do not want to keep paying their senior staff when newer staff can do the same thing. Like, they can lower the animation quality, they can lower the product's quality. by firing the people that have been there at the company for decades, who are being paid a lot, and in exchange hiring new faces that require less cash to be paid. Now, in the past, one way that they did this was to give them humiliating jobs. So, for instance, let's think about Blizzard, right? Like, if they have a really great artist that's been with the company for decades, but they don't want to keep paying him, what they can do is to force him to draw, like, little pieces of armor, you know, like the little circles on the mailcloth, and just do that all day. And it's humiliating because an intern can do that. Like, if this is a person that's incredibly talented and can bring forth original characters that are beloved by many, giving them such a job is basically going to force them to quit. Especially since most of these people already have enough money and what they want is to just show their creativity to the world. But with diversity, they didn't even need to do that. They would just try to get these people out in order to say, oh, well, we need to meet our diversity quota, so we're going to put you all into this department, and then we're downsizing the department, and there you go. Well, apparently, now the employees are going to be able to sue the company for these things. And it's interesting because the left is supposed to be the one on behalf of the employees, right? I mean, they're the ones with the workers, and when they champion minimum wage, they do not seem to champion other legislation that gives the employees more power against their employer. The interesting thing that I notice is that most companies, especially like most large corporations, are going to be absolutely fucked by this. And what I mean is that I have seen lawsuits. I think it was also Blizzard, which had all the women in the company file a class action lawsuit claiming that the gender pay gap is affecting them. And when you looked at what they were claiming, it was something like 3%, which could be ruled as an accounting error. But again, this was the company culture. This is what they taught their employees on the benches of Tumblr. And so they're like using this in order to sue, and the company usually ends up settling because they realize that the cost of lawsuit is higher even if they win. So now they're going to be trapped between a rock and a hard place, you know, because the way the gender pay gap is usually calculated is by adding every single woman at the company, from the janitor all the way to the CEO. And then you add the men through the same process, you average it out, and then you get to see. So if you have like a lot more men that are coders and you have more women that are in janitorial positions and they're paid less, well, then you get the gender pay gap. Especially if you have like jobs like coding, which requires crunching. Meanwhile, the HR lady never gets to crunch. Like, she always gets home after 8 or 6 hours a day. So you end up with the problem, right? So now you get sued if you're not diverse enough, and you also get sued if you're diverse. So you see why companies are freaking out about this. But again, like, this is the culture that they encourage. This is the legislation that was produced. So they made their bed, and we're going to see what's happening in the future. The interesting thing is that this does not require the government to crack down on companies. It does not require like federal lawsuits or anything like this. It just requires employees to get a lawyer and to file a lawsuit. So we're going to see if that happens. I do expect at least a couple of cases, and if they win, then Disney is probably sweating bullets. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.